I spent 17 minutes talking about the 6 books that I read in July, and this month I read 10 books, so this might be a long video, although I'm going to try to be as concise as possible. I would, however, suggest maybe grabbing like a snack or something. Hi everybody, my name is Saajid, and today we're going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of August. I feel like I read 4 3-star books, 4 4-star books, and 2 5-star books. I could be wrong, but we'll see as we go along. I am just going to talk about all of them, starting from my least favorite and working my way up to my favorite. So my least favorite book of the month was still not that bad of a book because I gave it a solid 3 stars, and that was The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I finally got around to reading this book. I had read all of John Green's books prior to reading this, and I'd even seen the movie prior to reading it, which is why I didn't really enjoy it so much, because it offered nothing new to me. I'm so used to the kind of writing and the kind of storytelling that John Green gives us with all of his books, and my immunity to that made this book lack all of the charm it seems to have on most people. And then having seen the movie, nothing about the story was like surprising or intriguing to me, so ultimately I gave it 3 stars. I would still recommend it because I feel like everybody read this by now and I'm the only one late on the train. Second to that, I gave 3.25 stars. That's a very particular rating, but I gave it anyway to Children of the Spider by Imam Baksh. This book is set in Guyana, which is a South American Caribbean country, and I feel like I need to say that because some of y'all asses be saying all kind of crazy shit about Guyana and where it is. Some people think it up in Africa. No sis. It's in South America, but it's a Caribbean country. Some of y'all need like atlases and like a world history book or something, really. It follows a girl called Mayali who is from another world called Zolposh, which is a world where spiders rule. They come to Earth via these portals and kidnap humans and take them back to Zolposh so that they can enslave them. Mayali was born and raised there to parents who were kidnapped from an indigenous community in Guyana. She manages to escape through one of the portals and she meets up with this boy called Joseph, who's also from an indigenous community, and together they go on a search to look for Mayali's dad because he managed to escape a couple years prior. But there are like these servants slash minions from the spider world who are chasing Mayali, and she has to try to evade them, and for that reason it reads very much like the first Percy Jackson novel. So if you like that and you want like a Caribbean version to it, read this book. Otherwise, I really liked the characters and the story was fine. It just wasn't really my cup of tea. The fantastical elements were a bit wonky and all over the place. I don't think we got a lot of time to develop on them, especially since we know about this whole completely different world, but we don't set foot in it. The story begins after Mayali escapes, so we hear about this world, we hear what it's like, but we don't really get to go there or to see it. That being said, I do believe this is the first book in a series, and if it is, we might get some more development on that aspect of the story as the narrative progresses. But so far, I wasn't so enamored with it. I did like it. I really love the characters, as I said, especially Anansi. Anansi is in this book and she's a lady, and let me tell you, she's fabulous. So yeah, 3.25 stars. Would recommend it if you're into Percy Jackson, you want to read like a fun middle grade fantasy story set in Guyana. Read it. I also read a e-novella which was called Knit One Girl 2 by Shira Glassman, I think is the name of the author. It's about 2 Jewish American artists living in Florida. One of them is a painter, the other one is like a knitter, as you could tell by the title. It's told from her perspective. She wants to do a collaboration with the artists and combine their artistic skills to make cool socks or some shit like that. And then, as you could tell by the cover, they kind of start falling for each other. So it's a cute short romance novella. There is a central conflict in the form of a scandal in one of their lives, and I think it was handled very well. Overall, it was short and sweet and cute, and if you're looking for something to pass... Overall, it was short and sweet and cute, and if you're looking for something like that to pass the time, I would recommend picking this one up. And then my last 3-star book, I would give this like a 3.5 to 3.75 stars. It was If I Stay by Gail Forman. I completely listened to this one on audio, and it was fine. Like, I wasn't, you know, amazed by it or anything, but I didn't have a problem with it at the same time. Like, literally, I have no qualms, no quarrels with this book whatsoever. I just found it was okay. It didn't blow me out, you know, it didn't blow me over the moon or anything. It's about a girl who gets into a car accident with her entire family. Her parents die on the spot, and her brother are in critical condition. She's having somewhat of an out-of-body experience where her disembodied consciousness is aware of all of the people around her in the hospital and stuff like that, but she herself can't really communicate with them because her actual body is unconscious and, you know, in a coma or whatever it is, I don't know. She actually comes to the realization eventually that she has the power to choose whether or not she dies. And you know you wouldn't be watching my channel unless we have the all professional camera shift because my phone just decided to shut the fuck off while I was speaking. As I was saying, our main protagonist comes to the realization that she has to choose whether or not she dies. So she yields that power, and her decision becomes dependent upon, you know, her boyfriend, her best friend, and her grandparents, and, you know, the condition of her brother, all of whom she's seeing and checking on, who's coming to check on her, and all that kind of stuff. So the story is told like in the present while she's in the hospital, and we also get flashbacks with each of all of the characters, her parents, her brother, the same boyfriend, best friend, grandparents, and everybody. And that just makes their, you know, presence in the hospital all the more powerful to this main protagonist. And overall, as I said, I really liked it. I loved the characters' relationships with each other. I didn't really care for the characters themselves that much. So I think that's ultimately why I couldn't give it like 4 or 5 stars. It's not very memorable, and I did listen to the audiobook on 2.5 times speed, so it went by very quickly. So that concludes all of my 3-star books. Now we're jumping into the books that I gave 4 stars to. The first of which is Miss Marvel Volume 1. This is about Kamala Khan, who is a teenage superhero. She's also Muslim and Pakistani American, which is just amazing to see in a comic book series. Beyond that though, I really did enjoy this volume because the majority of it takes place in a sewer, and I love sewer intrigue and mysteries and stories because it reminds me a lot of all of the shows that I used to watch when I was growing up, particularly the Penguins of Madagascar, the show. I love that show so much, and this book reminded me of that because I think that was the show where they had like the most sewer scenes out of all of them. They always used to be up in those stink sewers for some reason. So that was one of the main reasons why I did enjoy the book. Also, they tried to do some like commentary, some societal, you know, commentary on society and shit. I was like, okay, so let's try to be woke and shit. Overall, it was good. It was fun. I liked it. I don't really have much to say about any of these volumes when I do read them. All I have to say is I just can't wait to see this bitch in a movie. They need to bring her ass on the big screen. I know they be talking like, y'all have enough of these Wonder Bread ass built superheroes. I need to see Miss Kamala Khan on the screen already. Okay, so y'all need to bring her ass quick. I also read Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. This is a brilliant book. I gave this one a solid 4 stars. It's set in like a lower class black community in the States, and it's about a boy whose brother was murdered by somebody, and he wants to kill that person for killing his brother. So he grabs a gun from his brother's drawer. He leaves their apartment, which is on the 8th floor, and he goes into the elevator with the intention of going down. But while he goes down, the elevator stops on each floor, and a ghost from his past comes into the elevator and confronts him about the decision that he's about to make. The thing about this book is that it is told completely in verse, like poetry, and it is told within the span of 1 minute, which is what makes it amazing. Thematically, it's great. It's obviously trying to address issues that are faced in these types of communities, which I can't really speak to myself, but coming from an authentic voice like Jason Reynolds, I know that he definitely aced that with, you know, ace the story where that's concerned. However, what I was intrigued by with regards to this book is how brilliantly it's told. As I said, it's told in verse, but because of the fact that it takes place in 1 minute, the verse makes sense. It makes the story go by quicker, and it also kind of gives you that sense of limited time and limited space because this takes place in an elevator. So the pages in a way kind of looked like an elevator too, because I don't know if you could see it, but it's printed in a way where the pages are kind of like, they have stains on them and scratches and marks, and that really does create the aesthetic of the elevator, which makes sense because if it's told in verse, you know, you don't really have time to, you know, have any exposition about what the elevator looks like and that kind of stuff. So the print on the pages themselves are part of the story, which I think was absolutely incredibly brilliant. This book is, quite frankly, a work of art, and I would highly recommend it. Then I read History Is All You Left Me by Adam Silvera. Oh my god, Adam Silvera is emotionally manipulative, let me tell you. This is a book about a boy called Griffin whose ex-boyfriend Theo dies. He goes to Theo's funeral and he meets up with this boy called Jackson, who was Theo's boyfriend at the time of his death. So he still had feelings for Theo, and not only does he have to come to terms with losing, you know, his ex-boyfriend who he still loved, but he has to do that with this other boy who his ex-boyfriend loved after him, if you're following what I'm saying. And the book is told in 2 completely different timelines, just like If I Stay. It's told in the past, where we are given the context of our main protagonist's relationship with Theo as their relationship, you know, started to blossom and its eventual demise. And this is why Adam Silvera is so emotionally manipulative, because I am jumping in between these 2 chapters, okay? I'm in the past where it's all nice and sunny and sunflowers and rainbows and, you know, they're in love and everything's fine, everything's dandy. And then I'm reminded in the next chapter, oh right, yeah, this bitch dead. It's this roller coaster ride of happiness and sadness and happiness and sadness. It's overall just a very bittersweet book. And Adam Silvera really did a good job at playing with my emotions, which is why I gave it 4.5 stars. I didn't give it 5 stars because there were some technical things with the writing that I think could have been done better. And there was this twist that kind of happens closer to the end that I wasn't really sure how I felt about it. Like, I liked it. I think it was an interesting part of the story and I like what came of it. But some people have issues with it for reasons that I would say, but then I would spoil the book, and that's kind of the reason why people have an issue with it, if you catch my drift. I like this book. I gave it 4.5 stars regardless of that. It's a great book. I can't wait to read more about Adam Silvera, even though I know he's going to snatch my wig and my tears. I feel like we're moving through this fast. The last 4-star book that I gave 4.5 stars to as well was Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and I have to apologize in advance because if I were to talk about this book in any substantial way, we would be here for 18 hours because this is a long ass book and there's a lot to unpack and I just don't have the time to do that right now. If you didn't know, Americana is basically the story of a woman called Ifemelu who has moved to the United States from her home country of Nigeria. She's been living there for 13 years and the book starts off with her planning to move back to Nigeria, and the entire rest of the story just consists of mostly flashbacks, and then now and again we'd come back to the present. The flashbacks obviously give us the story of Ifemelu's life in Nigeria as a teenager when she met her high school sweetheart Obinze, who is also a very main character in this book. We follow him as he progresses throughout the years as well, although the majority of the book is focused on Ifemelu. We see her, she eventually moves to the States, gets settled in, her life there, the people that she meets, the people that she falls in love with. It's a very, very complex, complicated book with a character who doesn't really change or develop, and there isn't really much of a plot to this story, and for that reason, some people might not be fully engaged with this novel. I did find it engaging because I was invested in these characters' story. I did listen to the audiobook, and I personally would recommend the audiobook more than reading the book, and I say that because there are so many different accents in this book and the narrator does an excellent job at doing all of them. The African accents, the Caribbean accents, the American accents, the British accents, although she could work a little bit on her American accent and her Caribbean accent. She did a South Asian accent at one point. I was diagnosed, girl. So she could work on those things, but overall she's just an excellent narrator. I enjoyed listening to her. I can't remember her name, but I'll put it on the screen if I can find it. She was excellent. Please, please, please listen to the audiobook. If not, read the book because it's amazing. I realize I haven't talked much about like the issues addressed in this book, but as I said, it's so much. Maybe I might do my own review of this at some point in time, but if you're looking for something that deals with like the experience of a non-American black in America, if you're looking at something that deals with the conversation of natural hair, with politics, with immigration, with love, with romance, all of these different things, this book has everything in it. I would highly recommend it. It is such a dense book with so many things to unpack that I would be here for hours, as I said, if I had to talk about it fully. So I gave it 4.5 stars and I definitely recommend it. It's worth all of the praise and acclaim and hype that it's been getting since it was published 4 or 5 years ago. So now we're making it down to my last 2 books of the month, which were my 5-star books. I love these books so much and they're both young adult Caribbean books. I don't know what order to talk about them in. I'm just going to randomly put one before the other because I kind of like them both equally. I guess I'll be biased and talk about the one that's set in my country first, but the book is called The Piece of Kikuyu by Kevin Jared Hussein. It is set in the early 1990s Trinidad in a rural, mostly Indian community, and it's about a girl called Rune whose classmate slash acquaintance Dumpling is murdered and her body is found in the village of Kikuyu where she lives, and she takes it upon herself to try to solve the mystery of what happened behind this murder, and she gets herself into some pretty intense and just very scary situations. This book is very scary, even though it's not horror. It's so intriguing and so gripping that I read it in one sitting, which is not something that I usually do. I haven't read a book in one sitting since Written in the Stars, which was 3 years ago. So that says something about this book. Like Americana, even though it's not as, you know, big or dense or expansive, there's still a lot to unpack, so I would be here for a while if I had to talk about everything. But there's one particular thing that I really did enjoy about it, which is that it tried to address the way in which we as a society respond to murders. And when I say we as a society, I'm particularly talking about Trinidad and Tobago. People get murdered here all the time, specifically Trinidad. We have this kind of like reactionary response where, first of all, we only make a big deal of it if it's a certain type of person who died. So if it's somebody who's from like a richer family, who's from a more privileged background, you know, the first page of this book, our main protagonist is kind of lamenting that if she was the one who were killed, nobody would be saying anything because, you know, she's just this little dark-skinned Indian girl from a poor family. As her friend was definitely a lot more affluent and, you know, by societal standards, prettier. You know, for that reason, it makes the tragedy all the more tragic, which is so true of our society. This book is set in the early 1990s. And that's still a problem that we have today. And another thing that this book addresses is the fact that we're all basically chickens. The butcher comes in, grabs one chicken, takes them and kills them, and we all flock around for a little while, talk about it, scream about it, and then we go back to clucking and picking stuff up from the ground until somebody else gets killed, and it just happens over and over again. Which is to say that we don't really try to make it incumbent upon, you know, our society to find out what really happened. All we know is that underhand shit happens in Trinidad and Tobago. People are killed and we reacted, and then we move on without, you know, demanding answers with closed investigations. It's a very, very scary thing that happens in this country. And the fact that this book is set in the 1990s and shit like this is still going on just makes it, you know, all the more depressing in a way. But overall, it is a very, very good book. The quality is amazing. It does have loose ends at the end of it. Not all of the answers are given to us because I think the author is trying to kind of make it realistic in the sense that, you know, life, especially in Trinidad, when it comes to murders and these things, you know, it doesn't like, you know, everything doesn't just fall into place like an Agatha Christie novel. Some mysteries are left unsolved. So for that reason, this book might turn some people off, but I definitely appreciate what the author did there. Overall, I give it 5 stars. I loved it. If you are looking for something set in my country and if you're looking for a cute little mystery novel, read this. It's very, very intriguing. And so the last book that I have to talk about is The Art of White Roses by Viviana Prado Nunez, which I'm sure I mentioned before on this channel. It is a YA historical fiction novel set in 1957 Cuba during the context of the Cuban Revolution. Our main protagonist is Adela Santiago. She's 13 years old and her society is somewhat of an enigma to her. As a young girl, she understands that, you know, Batista is not a good person and Castro is morally grey, but she doesn't really fully understand what's going on in her country. She knows that the Americans are here and Cubans don't really have very much of a positive disposition towards them. She's worried and concerned about her older cousin Miguel and her father, who are going out to work every day and who are encountering, you know, these revolutionaries and, you know, all of the different things that are happening. They're exposing themselves to it. So she's somewhat confused about that. She's also confused about people in her neighborhood who are going missing since the revolution started. So this book has a huge air of mystery to it. It is in its own right a mystery novel, but not a very traditional mystery novel because it's not like a whodunit kind of murder thing. It's more like a figuring out what's going on in society and how that is connected to all of the mysterious things that are happening in the community. It's also a book that's very much about empathy. The title of it is The Art of White Roses, and there was a Cuban revolutionary, not in the time of the Americans, but I think in the time of like Spanish colonialism. His name was Jose Marti. He wrote a poem that had something to do with white roses, and white roses acted as like a metaphor for empathy. Basically, he would give white roses to the people that he loved, but also to his enemies, which is to say that people are complicated and you can't just judge somebody in a black or white, left or right kind of way. Everybody's complicated and you need to have some sort of empathy even if some people do you wrong, even if some people are not fully 100% good. And we see that exemplified throughout the story in Adela's own disposition towards people in her life and in her family. This book has an extremely amazing family dynamic. It's such a well-rounded story, and I cannot believe that the author of this novel was 16 years old when she wrote the first draft. It was published when she was probably like about 17 or 18. I am 21. I struggle drafting up a tweet. I have to be Googling like words like fucking necessary and shit, and my girl is over here writing whole ass complex, you know, novels. Come to think of it, I'm glad I left this one out for last because I think I did kind of like it a little bit more than the Piece of Kikuyu now. Like, I thought I liked them equally, but talking about it now, I definitely think I liked it more. So, I highly recommend this book. Like, if you have to take any recommendation from this video, take this one and the Piece of Kikuyu too, because they're both Caribbean books and, you know, Those are all of the books that I read in the month of August, which was probably my most productive reading month of ever. In the comments down below if you've read any of these books, I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely, lovely day. I'm going to drink a glass of water now because I feel like if my tongue is going to like turn into dust and fall out of my mouth. And until next time, inshallah, keep reading. Oh bitch, we need to turn on the fan. Oh my god. Let us take a thumbnail for these hoes. Let's try not to look like I was dipped in oil. A sexual thumbnail. This is how I'm gonna like people to watch. If I had like biceps, I'll do one of those like kind of poses, but I don't really have that as yet. So I'll stick to the seductive